Do you want to learn to play Nemo's War 2nd Edition?
In this video, we're going to take you through the full rules of this game, and if you stay tuned till the end, we'll have some words from our special guest, the game's developer, Alan Emrich, with some tips and strategies on how to play. Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University, bringing you a variety of quality board game videos. On this channel we do a lot of overview, playthrough, vlog, and how to play just like this one.
So if you're new here, please consider subscribing to our channel and clicking on the bell to get notifications of when we have new content.
Now let's get to the rules.
Nemo's War is a designed solitaire game in which the player takes on the role of Captain Nemo, piloting the Nautilus in the universe of Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The player will pilot the Nautilus throughout the oceans, sinking ships where they find them, searching for treasure, helping the locals by inciting uprisings, and various other actions consistent with Nemo's actions in Verne's novel. If the player can survive the perils of the ocean until the end of the game, which is triggered by the finale card near the bottom of the Adventures deck, then the player counts up all victory points gained, and a score of 220 points or more wins the game for the player. I'm going to take you through a partial setup of the game, and in particular focus on the elements which require decisions from the player. I'm also going to take this opportunity to introduce a few of the concepts of the game where it's appropriate at this time. The first step of setup and the first choice a player has to make is what will be Nemo's motive. In the novel, Nemo was interested in science, exploration, anti-imperialism, and war, and at the start of the game you have to choose which of these you're going to focus on. Choose your motive, and then find the cardboard token representing it and place it over this space. Your choice of motive is going to influence where you get the most points in the game. All of these icons represent different types of victory points, and depending on your motive, these will be worth more or less. For example, if you're getting victory points for seeing wonders when you're exploring, that'll be worth 7 points per one of these icons. But if you choose war, you'll be getting only 2. And so your choice of motive is going to influence your style of play. Next, you have to build the event deck from all of these adventures cards. First, pull out all of the black banded act cards, the red banded rising action card, a hollow explosion, and all of the partially black banded finale cards. Shuffle the finales, choose one at random, and deal it onto the bottom of the pile. Remove the rest from the game. Deal 4 of the basic adventure cards into the same pile, and then shuffle the whole lot. These will be the bottom 5 cards of your event deck, and so the finale will occur somewhere in the bottom 5. Next, take the hollow explosion card and a number of other event cards which depends on your motive, shown on page 5 in the rulebook. For example, if you're exploring, take this and deal 8 cards on top of it. Then shuffle these 9 cards and put them on top of your finale pile. Put the Act 3 card on top of the pile and then deal more adventures, again depending on the motive that you've chosen. Place the Act 2 card on top and another 6 events. And finally place Act 1 on top. Do not shuffle this deck any further. The deck that you've just created is called the event deck. It goes on the top left-hand draw pile of the board, and you'll be working through these once per turn, as it will escalate the game as it goes along. The rest of the adventure cards that you had left over after building that pack go here, on the top right area of the board next to adventure deck, and you can go hunting these adventures out during the game. Take all of the ship tokens in the game and sort them into colours based on the colour on their front. Any grey or purple tokens should be flipped over to the other side. All of the different colours of ships represent different difficulties of ships that you'll encounter during the game. The white ones aren't even warships and they're the easiest, and the yellow ones are the easiest warships you'll encounter. As the colours get darker, the ships get more powerful. At the start of the game, you'll only be facing the easiest ships, so take all the white ships and all the yellow ships and put them into a cloth bag, ready to be drawn. The gold, orange and red ships are placed here, and those will be put into the bag progressively as you get deeper into the game. And the blue and green ships are placed in their spaces on this track and will be added to the bag as you get more notorious during the game. You'll have 2 black ships left, and those are placed on these specific spots. They relate to specific events in the game. These 3 tracks at the top of the board represent the resources available to your ship: Captain Nemo, the crew, and the hull, and you'll place these horseshoe tokens at the start of each of these tracks. Search through the Nautilus upgrade cards and find the one card which refers to your motive. You now have the opportunity to build that upgrade as part of setup. To build the upgrade, you must spend 3 ship resources in any combination. If you choose not to build the upgrade, place it into the top slot of the salvage track. Then, either way, shuffle the Nautilus upgrade cards remaining and deal out so that there are 4 upgrades available. You'll have the opportunity to build from this selection of upgrades later in the game. I'll leave you to work through the rulebook for the rest of the steps of setup, as there's no special choices or explanation required to get through that. Your final setup should look like this. To win Nemo's War, you must survive until the end of the game and have scored at least 220 victory points. The end of the game occurs when you find and resolve the finale card, which is in the bottom 5 cards of your adventures deck. And this means that your game is going to last between 24 to 28 turns, as you're going to flip one of these in each turn. However, there are 3 different ways your game can end in defeat before you get to that point. Firstly, as you take hits and fail at challenges during the game, you will lose various resources from your ship. And if any one of these resources reaches the red circle on its track, you immediately lose the game. Secondly, a lot of actions in the game will increase your notoriety as a captain, moving you up this track. If you reach the space on this track which states defeat for your chosen motive, the game ends immediately and you lose. For example, if you've chosen to explore, reaching 36 will end your game. But if you've chosen war, you can take up to 51 notoriety before you lose the game. Thirdly, while the oceans start relatively empty at the start of the game, they will progressively start to fill up with more and more warships. And if you ever get to the point of the game where you need to place a warship but cannot, you immediately lose the game. All 3 of these losing conditions will automatically result in defeat for the player, even if you've reached 220 victory points. Next, I'm going to take you through an overview of how a round plays, before coming back and talking about it in detail. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the rules as they relate in Act 1. As the game progresses through Act 2 and Act 3, some of the rules will change and a lot of the challenges you'll face will become more severe. But I'll talk you through how the game plays in Act 1 first and tell you how it escalates later in the video. Note also that a lot of the rules of the game are printed on the game board, with all of these little helpful reminder places shown for your reference. I will be going through the full rules, even if they're printed on the board, but I will emphasize when rules are not shown on the board, so you can take special effort to remember them. The turn sequence is described in this portion of the board. On each turn, you'll first draw and resolve an event card from the event pile. Then, you'll roll your dice to determine whether it's a standard turn or a lull turn, which occurs on doubles. Then, you'll place ships onto the board and take action points based on the dice, and then you'll take all of your actions. I'm going to skip over the events phase for now and go straight into the placement phase. In your placement phase, roll the dice and arrange them from lowest to highest. Then place one ship in each of those oceans, based on the numbers shown at the top of the ocean. At the start of the game, this will mean placing a hidden ship token into those oceans. Once an ocean is filled and it needs another token, there is an escalation of ways that you can start placing ships onto the board, and this is listed in this box here. We'll come back to that a little later in the video. Then gain a number of action points equal to the difference between the numbers on the 2 white dice you rolled. So in this case, the player would gain 1 action point. Players have a maximum of 5 action points at any time and can save at most 1 action point from the previous round. If a player has rolled doubles, then he or she will gain no action points. But this is called a lull turn, and there are some different rules associated with lull turns that we'll come back to later. Then, play goes to the actions phase, in which the player can spend these action points on this selection of actions. There are 8 different actions available in the game, half of which will cost you 1 action point and half of which will cost you 2. The options for actions are to move, which allows you to move along one of these blue lines to an adjacent ocean, to attack, which allows you to seek out and attempt to sink a ship for its victory points and other bonuses, to incite, which lets you try to place uprising cubes onto these spaces on the board, which give you victory points at the end of the game and allow you to reduce your notoriety. You can rest, which allows you to try to replenish your crew, and you can repair, which allows you to try to replenish your hull. You can search for treasure in an ocean with a treasure token in order to try to find treasure worth victory points. You can refit, where you attempt to get rid of salvaged ships in order to upgrade your Nautilus further. Or you can go adventuring, where you can seek out new event cards from the adventure deck, and if you resolve them, get to take some extra treasures for these tokens on top of the pile. All of these actions, other than moving, will directly lead to collecting things which will give you these different types of victory points and lead you towards your victory. Next, we'll talk about each of these actions in detail, starting with movement. Movement is fairly simple. You can take the Nautilus and move it 1 space along one of these dark blue paths to an adjacent ocean. This 1 arrow wraps around the board between the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific. You cannot move along a dotted black line. Moving costs 1 action point. The next action I'm going to talk about is searching for treasure. Searching for treasure can only be done in an ocean which has a treasure available token, and this token will be removed if the action is successful. Searching for treasure attempts to earn treasure tokens, which are mostly worth points for the treasure victory points or the wonders victory points. Searching requires 1 action point, but it may not be successful, and this introduces the concept of a test, which occurs across pretty much all of these other actions. A test is a roll of 2 dice to determine the success at an action. Before making a test roll, you will look at any die roll modifiers that apply to this particular test. These are all listed in the relevant row of this test table. So, in the search example, you can gain a positive die roll modifier for exerting any one ship resource, which I'll talk about in a sec. You'll get a positive die roll modifier if you have the Arcane Library upgrade, and you'll get a -1 die roll modifier for each revealed ship token. So, in the Nautilus's ocean, there are 2 revealed ship tokens, a warship and a non-warship. In this case, it doesn't matter whether the ships are warships or non-warships, so there will be a negative die roll modifier of 2. The player does not have the Arcane Library, so there's no positive modifier for that. And the player may choose to exert 1 ship resource. Let's say the player chooses to exert the crew. Take the crew's marker and move it 1/2 step to the right of its current location. The number in the horseshoe is the positive die roll modifier. So in this case, the total die roll modifier is +3 for the crew and -2 for the ships, a total of +1. You must choose which, if any, ship's resource you're going to exert before rolling the dice. The player then rolls the 2 dice and adds the modifier. So the modified result would be 7. So in this case, a 7 would allow the player to gain 1 treasure token, taken at random from the supply, but would gain 1 notoriety. When searching, a player may gain up to 2 treasure tokens if highly successful, but will lose a crew or a hull, or a crew and a hull for very low rolls. So if the player had finished with a die roll of 6, he or she would need to lose either one crew or one hull. And if the player chooses to lose the resource that was exerted, it moves a half step to the right. Or if the player loses one which was not exerted, it moves a full step to the right. Next, resolve what happened to the resource that you exerted. This is not printed down here in the table, but these rules apply to all tests where you exert a ship resource. If your test was a success, which is any scenario printed in green, that is a 7 or higher, then you get back the resource that you exerted. However, if you fail, which is any of the red scenarios, numbering 6 or lower, then you will lose the resource that you exerted. The amount of the resource that you lose depends on your die roll. If the lowest number that you rolled was a 1, you lose 1 of that resource. If the lowest number was a 2 or anything above a 2, then you lose 2 of that resource. This is in addition to any penalties printed in the table. So exerting crew and then failing the search action like this could result in as much as 3 crew lost. These rules apply across all tests in the game. The other rule that you need to remember about tests, and this is not printed on the board, so you will need to remember this when playing, is that a natural roll of 2, that is snake eyes, will always result in the worst failure scenario, regardless of any die roll modifiers that you've applied to this test. If you are successful at searching, take the treasure available token away from that ocean and draw the relevant number of treasure tiles, placing them into collected treasures. There are 4 basic types of treasure tokens: treasure and wonders, which will give you points based on which motive you're playing with; retain tokens, which you will hold onto and then either keep for their points or discard them for some other bonus, such as extra actions or die roll modifiers; and immediate discard treasures, which will either give you some extra bonus or be cursed and give you an extra penalty. These are discarded and resolved immediately. The next action I'll go through is attack, which costs 1 action point. Sinking ships will be worth some victory points, some salvage points, and possibly some other bonuses. And even if you are not playing with a motive that particularly incentivizes sinking ships, you will still need to sink some ships to avoid getting overrun by warships and losing the game that way. Attacking follows these steps. First, choose a ship to attack in the Nautilus's current ocean, and this can be a warship, which shows this red star, a non-warship, or a hidden ship. And choose whether you're going to do a bold attack or a stalk attack against that ship, and I'll go through the differences as we proceed. Place the token next to the ship you're attacking to remember exactly what you're doing. If you've chosen to attack a hidden ship, then draw a random ship from the bag and place it in the hidden ship's place. Place the new ship on its white or coloured side, not the grey or purple side. If you've chosen to stalk attack a hidden ship and you don't like the ship that comes out, you may end your action there. But if you did a bold attack, you must proceed with the attack. From that point, proceed with the combat sequence listed in this section of the board, and this describes how to do combat tests against these ships. First, if you're fighting a warship, it attacks you. In this case, the player is not fighting a warship, it's a passenger ship, but if the player had chosen to attack the belliqueuse, then it would shoot first. The warship's attack is a test against that warship's strength, so in this case 7. The only die roll modifiers to a warship attack are +1 for the reinforced armor upgrade, and -1 if there are any other warships in that ocean other than the one attacking. This is the only type of test in the game where players cannot exert their ship's resources for die roll modifier help. Roll the dice and evaluate the result. If it meets or exceeds the strength value on the warship, then it has missed you. You always want to roll high. If the die roll is less than the strength value, then the Nautilus suffers hits. This is going to cost you some resources at random. The number of hits you suffer is equal to the lower of the 2 die roll values. Roll another die for each hit you suffer and lose the corresponding resource. So, if this were your warship roll, you would suffer 3 hits. If you roll snake eyes, then you have a potential catastrophe on your hands. Roll 1 die, and that is the number of hits that the Nautilus takes. Then roll that many dice, and lose the corresponding resource for each of those rolls. This could result in up to 6 hits at once if you're really unlucky. After you've resolved the warship's attack, if indeed you're fighting a warship, you move on to the Nautilus's attack, and in this case you're performing a test attempting to beat that ship's defense. The die roll modifiers for your attack are +1 if you're doing a stalk attack. You don't get this for a bold attack. You can get a bonus for exerting ship's resources. You'll get +1 if you've strengthened your prow with an upgrade, and you'll get -1 if there are other warships in the area. And roll a dice. If your modified die roll fails to meet the target, then you miss the ship. You gain 1 notoriety, and you lose 1 or 2 of the exerted resources as per normal. If you roll snake eyes, then you'll automatically lose regardless of any modifiers. You will lose 2 of the exerted resources instead of 1, and you'll gain 2 notoriety instead of 1. If you are successful, then you have sunk the ship. Take it off the ocean and then do one of 2 things with it. Either place it onto the tonnage track in the row corresponding to the ocean where you sunk it. If you're in one of the smaller unnumbered oceans, pick a row of any adjacent ocean. From here you'll be able to claim its victory points. Filling up the tonnage track will be worth victory points equal to the rightmost column that you've completely filled, and so sinking a lot of ships can gain you a lot of points in this way. Alternatively, you can place it onto this track in order to salvage the wrecked ship. Each ship that is placed here can be spent as a salvage point for upgrading your ship using the refit action. When placing a ship here, you forego its victory points. Either way, when you sink the ship, you must take notoriety equal to the number of skull and crossbones shown on the left of the ship. This means that when you go attacking ships, you're most likely going to get notoriety, either for sinking a ship with skull and crossbones on it, or as penalty for failing to sink the ship. And so players do need to keep this in mind when they go out attacking ships. Some ships also come with a bonus shown in the bottom right, in this case it's a treasure token, which is gained as soon as that ship is sunken. If you conducted a stalk attack, then after the combat has been resolved positively or negatively, your action is finished. If you did a bold attack, then you may get to attack again. The benefit of a bold attack is that you can attack multiple ships in the same ocean for a single action point. To make a subsequent bold attack, first gain 1 notoriety, and then pick another ship and attack it using the same procedure as before. You can keep attacking ships in this manner until you've destroyed all the ships in that ocean, or until you've failed to sink one of them, or until you take a ship as salvage. In other words, all ships except for the last one in a sequence of bold attacks must be placed into the tonnage track. There is one other type of attack in the game, a torpedo attack, which can only be conducted by a player who has the Steam Torpedoes upgrade, and I'm not going to cover this in this video. The next action is to incite, and this costs 1 action point. To incite, you must be in an ocean which has at least 1 available incite space attached to it, and you must have leftover unplaced uprising cubes. To incite, you perform a test using the modifiers printed here. You can exert a ship's resource, and you can also spend a treasure token in order to get a positive die roll modifier equal to its number of victory points. The Arcane Library upgrade and the Sunken Treasure bonus will also give you positive die roll modifiers on Incite. Then you get a negative die roll modifier for each visible ship and existing uprising cube in that ocean. Perform the test and then resolve the outcome. If you're successful, you can place a cube onto one of these spaces, which will be worth liberation victory points at the end of the game. And you'll be able to reduce your notoriety by 1 or 2 steps. If you're unsuccessful, you won't get to place a cube, and it may raise your notoriety 1 or 2 steps. This is the most reliable way that a player can reduce notoriety during the game, because any other effects that reduce notoriety are buried in these event decks. The next 2 actions are to rest or to repair, and each of these will cost you 2 action points. Resting aims to earn you more crew, and repairing aims to earn you more hull. To do either of these actions, you will once again take a test. You can use a positive die roll modifier from a resource that is not the resource you're trying to repair, and you once again can spend treasure in order to gain a positive die roll modifier. You'll get 1 negative die roll modifier if there are any warships in your ocean. Perform the test, and then either gain or lose the resources as shown there. The next type of action is to refit, and this costs 2 action points. When refitting, you are attempting to build new upgrades for the Nautilus. Once again, you must perform a test to see if you're successful, and you can exert a ship's resource, spend treasure tokens to gain positive modifiers, and you'll have a negative modifier if there are warships present. If you are successful, choose from the available 4 Nautilus upgrades, and then discard the number of salvaged ships equal to the number in the top right. These are removed from the game and will not be worth victory points. Take the upgrade card and add it to your tableau. This will give you a new ability which you can use for the rest of the game. Note that once you have an upgrade, you can discard it instead of taking one of the hits that a warship might have dealt you in battle. The last action is Adventures, which allows you to draw an adventure card, but in order to understand that, it's first best to go back through and explain the events phase of the game. The first step in each turn before you take your actions or place ships is the events phase, and in this you're going to draw the top card from the events deck. There are 3 types of event card that you might encounter: play, keep, and test. When you draw a play card, simply resolve the effect and then discard it into either the pass or the fail pile, depending on what the card tells you to do. If you draw a keep card, keep it in your tableau, and then you may choose to play it at a later time during the game. Often, these cards can only be played in certain oceans on the board. Once you've played it, the card may tell you either to place it into the pass or fail pile. The third type of card is a test, and when you draw this, you must immediately try to pass the test against this number in the red circle, and it will give you consequences whether you pass or fail. When resolving an adventure card test, you may exert 1 or more of the resources listed specifically on that card, in this case both a Nemo and a hull. No other test in the game allows you to exert more than 1 resource. You'll also get a -1 die roll modifier if there are any warships present in your ocean. Then, resolve the test, place the card into the discard pile, pass or fail, based on what it says, and resolve the outcome. At the end of the game, all of the adventure cards you play will end up in either the pass or the fail pile. Any points that are shown in the top left-hand corner of cards in the pass pile will count towards your final score. Any points on cards in the fail pile are worth nothing. This is how you'll resolve events during the events phase, but you can also go searching for events during the actions phase using the adventure action. This will cost you 2 action points. To do this action, draw the top card from the adventure deck, not the events deck, and then you can look at it and decide whether you want to use this card or not. If you like the card, resolve it one way or the other, and then, after it's complete, take 1 treasure token for each of these gems which is present on top of the adventure pile. These tokens are then removed. If you don't like the look of the adventure that you drew, place it on the bottom of the pile, leave the gems on the deck, and take no further action. So we've now spoken about the events phase, the placement phase on a standard turn, and all of the actions you can take. Now we'll talk about a lull turn. A lull turn occurs when the 2 white dice you roll are doubles, and therefore you'll be gaining no action points. To do a lull turn, you'll place ships for your white dice, and you'll place a new treasure available token onto the ocean associated with that number. So, for rolling a double 6, a new token will be placed on the number 6 ocean. And this is one of the main ways of getting these tokens back onto the board after you've already searched for treasure. If the location where you're to be putting that token already has a token there, place it on an adjacent ocean. If all of the adjacent oceans already have treasure, then you don't place more treasure. Then place another treasure token on top of the adventure deck. These will build up and they'll all be taken at once when a player successfully adventures. Next, you'll do the remove uprising cubes step on any ocean on the board where you've placed uprising cubes. Look at each ocean and add up the number of uprising cubes it has and the number of revealed ships, whether warships or non-warships, that it has. In this case, it's 2. Roll 1 die. If you roll equal or higher than that number, then nothing happens. If you roll lower, then one of the uprisings is struck down and removed from that location. Alternatively, you can leave that cube there by taking notoriety equal to the die roll. This means that a lull turn can be quite harmful to you if you're going a strategy which is quite high on uprising cubes, as it can remove a lot of those cubes from the board. Then take your actions phase for your lull turn. You may not have very many action points to play with because you don't gain any, but all of the actions which would normally cost you 2 action points on a standard round will cost you only 1 on a lull turn. So holding back 1 point and then spending it on one of these more expensive actions can be a useful way of using your lull turn. Next, I'm going to talk about the emergency help that you have available. At the start of the game, you will have these 6 characters: Ned Land, Professor Aronnax and Conseil, who are all characters in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and 3 officers. At any point, you can sacrifice one of these characters in order to take the bonus shown. This can be getting extra action points, giving you die roll modifiers which you can apply after you've seen the result of a roll, or giving you a complete re-roll of your 2 dice. When you sacrifice a character, flip it over. You're sacrificing the victory points shown on the front, as you would gain those at the end of the game if you didn't use them, and in some cases where you can see this blue in the bottom right corner, you'll take an extra penalty upon using it, either a notoriety or losing 1 Nemo. Players should really consider which scenarios these are worth spending on. There can be some truly catastrophic effects in the game, scenarios where you can take 4 or 6 hits to your resource at once, and having these available to mitigate those situations can be really helpful. There are also some of the retained treasures that players can collect during the game, which will have a similar effect to these 6 characters. What I've been showing you so far in the game is how the game looks at the start. Now I'm going to talk about how the game ramps up and escalates its threat to you as the game goes on. After a few events have happened, you'll move into Act 2 of the game. In Act 2 you will gain 1 black die, indicated by this icon, and you will add the gold coloured ships, which are a little bit stronger than the ones you started with, into the bag. From this point forward, in your placement phase, you'll roll all 3 of these dice. You'll still resolve the number of actions you take based on the white dice, but you will also make a placement for the black die, meaning there'll be 3 ships placed each round. When you move into Act 3, this escalates further. You'll add the orange ships into the bag, and you'll gain a 3rd white die. From this point forward, you'll roll all 4 dice in your placement phase, and you'll be placing 4 ships. But when choosing your number of action points, you'll be allowed to pick from any 2 of the 3 white dice that you rolled. This will make it easier for you to avoid lull turns, or alternatively, easier for you to take a lull turn if that's what you want. Note that once you have black dice, when you take a lull turn, you do not place for the black die, only for the white dice. The other thing that happens when you enter Act 3 is you get a one-off chance to change Nemo's motive, which is something you might look at doing if the direction you've been going in hasn't matched the victory points on your motive. You can either pick from one of the other 3 motives and then adopt that for the rest of the game, or if you keep your existing motive, choose one of the remaining Nautilus upgrades to add to the available for purchase row beside the salvage board. At some stage during Act 3, you'll come across the Rising Action card, which is red. And when this happens, you'll place some of the red, more powerful warships into the bag, keeping one out which will attack you immediately. Once you get to the point of putting 3 or 4 ships on the board every turn, the basic placement rules of putting a hidden ship token onto the ocean matching your die is quickly going to run out of space. Once you reach this point, start following these instructions in order whenever you have to place a ship. Firstly, you can place a hidden ship into an adjacent ocean to the one that you rolled a die for. When looking for adjacency in this circumstance, you can trace along the dotted black lines. You can never move along them, but they are adjacent for placement. Once there is no space for hidden ships, reveal a ship either in the numbered ocean or in an adjacent ocean by drawing a ship token from the bag and replacing one of the hidden ships with that token. As usual, ships should be placed on the white or coloured side, not the grey or purple side. Once all of the spaces on that and adjacent oceans are filled with ship tokens, your next option is to flip a white ship over to its grey warship side on that ocean or an adjacent ocean. If those oceans are completely full of warships, then place a warship somewhere else on the board. Draw a token from the bag, flip it to its grey side if it's white, and then choose any empty space on the board to place that token. If the warship that you place is in your own ocean, you must immediately make a stalk attack against it. If there's no empty space left on the board to place that warship, that's it, the game is over. The seas are overrun and you lose. The other way that the game escalates and becomes more dangerous is by moving up the notoriety track. We've already spoken about the fact that each of Nemo's motives has a lose condition on the notoriety track. Additionally, there are some escalations. When notoriety reaches 14, the blue warships are added to the bag. When notoriety reaches 26, the stronger green warships are added to the bag. When notoriety reaches 36, all coloured warships on the board are flipped over to their stronger purple sides. From this point forward in the game, anytime you draw and are to place a coloured warship onto the board, you will flip it to the purple side. Finally, when you reach 44 notoriety, you will gain another black die, which means that on every standard turn from this point forward, you'll be placing 5 ships, as long as you've reached Act 3. After you draw and resolve the finale card, as long as you've survived that long, then the game is over. Follow the instructions on any of your keep cards from your tableau to tell you whether to place them into the pass or fail piles, and put all of your Nautilus upgrades into the pass pile. Then count up your final score. To count up your final score, you'll be looking for these icons basically on anything you've collected during the game. This will be in the top corners of all of the cards from your pass pile, on any of the characters that you have left over, any of the ships on your tonnage track, or any treasures. There may also be some points on the resource tracks, and you'll get points for any of your uprising cubes on the board. Count up each type of icon separately and modify it by what's shown on your motive. For example, this player has sunk 9 points worth of non-warships, but gets an extra 2 points for each of those non-warships for a total of 21. Some modifiers are negative, and so in this case, every one of these treasure tokens, specifically the tokens with a treasure icon on it that the player has completed, is worth 1 point less. Note that no single item can be worth negative points, and so this treasure, with 0 points on it, remains worth 0 after the 1 is taken away. Liberation points are scored for each uprising cube on the board, so this player would get 6 points per cube. Science and wonders can be worth big multipliers, between 2 and 7 depending on your motive. You'll then take a penalty for any ship resources which are heavily damaged, based on the number that's printed at the bottom of the location of each of your tracks. Score Scouring the Seas points based on the last column, which is completely filled with sunken ships, so in this case 12. And gain unmodified points based on what's left on any of your characters. Your ship's resource tracks can also be worth positive victory points if you keep them in particularly good condition. Compare your final score to this table on page 28 of the rulebook to determine your level of success or failure. 220 points wins the game with an inconsequential victory. 250 points is a great success, and 275 points is an overwhelming triumph. The game can be played in 3 different difficulties, and the rules I just described to you are the normal difficulty, which is known as Officer. Most of the changes made to adapt to the easier mode, known as Sailor, or the harder mode, known as Captain, occur during setup. In easy mode, you start with more action points, fewer ships on the board, more treasure on the adventures deck, you get your bonus upgrade for free, and the Notoriety reinforcements come later in the game. In hard mode, the reinforcements come earlier, there's no starting treasure or action points, and more ships begin on the board. You cannot buy your starting upgrade at all. It must come through the salvage action like normal. The only change to gameplay between easy, medium and hard is in how much resource you lose when you fail a test. Recall that when you exert a resource and fail the test, you will lose either 1 of that resource if the lowest number is a 1, or 2 of that resource if the lowest number is a 2 or more. When playing in easy mode, you will only ever lose 1 of the resource you exert. When playing in hard mode, you will always lose whatever the lowest number of the dice that you rolled. So in this case, you would lose a full 3 resources. The game comes with a mini expansion module called the Deadly Seas, in which these Deadly Seas tokens are added to some of the stacks of ships available in the game. Some are favourable and some are not, but they will come out of the bag when you're trying to draw a ship and will be resolved at that time. This adds some variety and overall makes the game a little bit harder. The game is designed to be played solo, however it can be played cooperatively using these co-op role cards. At any given time, one player will serve the role of the captain, and others will have these specific roles. These will mean that certain players will have the responsibility to make a certain type of decision on behalf of the team. Captaincy will rotate from player to player during the game each time a test is failed, and the player will hold the captaincy as well as his or her normal role at any given time. This gives all players the chance to be captain during the game.
And that's how to play Nemo's War 2nd edition.
Now we have a special guest, the 2nd edition developer Alan Emrich, with some tips and strategies on how to play the game well. Ahoy there, Alan.
Ahoy, Captains! Alan Emrich here from Victory Point Games, and I am the 2nd edition designer and developer for Nemo's War. Now, God bless 1st edition designer Chris Taylor, who did an outstanding job and trusted me to deliver this 2nd edition that we're so passionate about and that you've just learned about on Meeple University. But right now, I want to take you with me on a Nautilus voyage to see the world as a winning player would see it, as they play Nemo's War. Hi, welcome to my game table. Alan Emrich here, and I wanted to show you the critical step that winning players use in Nemo's War to get those high scores. And we all know that step 1 is to draw an adventure card and do the adventure. It is step 2, where you roll the dice to place ships, that a winning player makes far-sighted, advantageous moves. Okay, you ready? So this is just, we're here in mid-game. Oop, there's the Nautilus so you can see it. We're here in mid-game, and I roll the dice, and it comes back this way. Actually, it's Act 3, you can tell because, hey, look, black dice is at it. And we take the numbers in order, 3, 5, 5, 6, and we place ships on the board. Well, I mean, because you're a player, the first thing you do is you look at the greatest differential in the white dice, and you see it's 6 minus 3 is 3, so you give yourself 3 actions, and you're feeling pretty good. Yeah, all right, we're going to have a good turn. We got 3 actions. But now you have to place ships, and you have to place a ship in each of these major oceans. All of the major oceans, you can see, are numbered. So we have to place a ship token in ocean number 3. Well, to do that, we use the ship placement priority protocols. So ocean number 3 is full. We can place a ship in a neighboring ocean. Let us place a ship here, then, a hidden ship token in a neighboring ocean. So 3, 5. Now 5 has a space, so we can drop a ship right there. But guess what? There's a second 5. That means no place here, no place open in a neighboring ocean. These are connected by the Suez Canal. Not that you can move through it, but for ship placement purposes, they're connected. So this guy's got nowhere to go. So if you look at the next protocol on the ship placement priority queue, it says you get to draw a ship token. And you're going to place a face-up ship token. And now, this is the important part. You can place it either in the number you rolled, ocean number 5, or an adjacent ocean that has a hidden ship token. You're going to exchange a hidden ship token for a revealed one. So you have to think, what is my motive? Where do I want to place this? And the particularly bad news here is that it is a warship. And where you place a warship, where do I place this warship? I'll probably place it up here, actually, in the ocean I rolled. Because placing a second warship in an ocean is a real problem. That means to sink one, the other one is escorting it, and it's going to put a whammy, a -1 die roll on all your efforts to hit it and bring it down because it's got an escort. So putting that second warship in any ocean is bad. This is called painting the board, where you fill it up with ship tokens and are trying to range the revealed ones the way you want them. And then finally, ocean 6. Well, there's no space here in ocean 6, no space next door. But as you can see, this ocean connects to this ocean, and because the world is... Did you say round? Don't say round. The world is cylindrical. You're playing Nemo's War. The map is flat, but it does connect on the sides. So we will add a hidden ship token here to the adjacent ocean. Now, if I placed... Let's just fast forward, say this is what the board looks like, and I place ships again for next turn. I would have to... Whoops, another 5, 3, 1, 3, 5, 6. Oh, wow. Well, at least I have 5 actions. That's good. Placing a ship in Ocean 1 means this is the only space that's available that's connected to Ocean 1 that's free. Ocean 3 is going to be a problem. It's all filled up. So I would have to draw another ship and paint the board. Now, ooh, good. A second non-warship. Okay, well, we'll put that right over here because we can just float by there someday and collect it, depending on my motive. Now, I got to think, what is my motive? Ocean 5, that's full again, so we have to draw. You see, this is the dangerous time in the game because the board is filling up with ships. And, well, since this is so warship heavy, I might as well add another one, and I'm just going to stay the heck out of the European seas. It's way too dangerous for me, so that's like my happy dumping ground. And then a 6, this is all full. The neighbor here is full. The neighbor there is full. That means we get to draw a revealed ship token. Whoops. And where do I want a warship? Oh, boy. I don't want it here to add a second warship. I don't want it here to add a second warship. I will put it here and kind of set that aside off to itself. So the secret is where you place your warships, your non-warships that are revealed as the board fills up and the protocols tell you to do that. One word of advice, do not let the board fill up with ships, because if you need to place a warship and there is no space, everything is warship occupied, you will lose the game. That's an imperialist victory. That means they've hunted down the Nautilus and you're trapped. So, painting the board, how you put revealed ships on the map is the secret sauce toward optimizing your score. Alan Emrich here, Victory Point Games, wishing you a bon voyage.
Bon voyage, Alan, and thank you for the tips. Well, we hope that you enjoyed the video and we hope that you enjoy playing.
If you'd like to see a little more of the game in action and get a flavour for how it flows, we have a 1-round playthrough video which you can watch, and you can access that by clicking on the link down in the description.
If you like this video, please let us know by hitting the like button and write your questions and feedback in the comment sections below. If you'd like to join a community who loves board game, we have Facebook group Meeple University Community, so check that out.
And finally, if you'd like to be among the first notified on what's new from Meeple University, please consider subscribing to our channel. You can click on that little Meeple up there in the corner to do so, and do hit the bell for notifications.
Until next time!